It's so good to see you. This is like a dream come true to have gone on a trip and have a captive audience of my stories and my photos when I come home. So thank you for being here and for supporting me on my sabbatical, for praying for me when I was gone, for being excited for me and my family. It was so fun to share it with you. So I would like to begin by you talking to a neighbor. If you could hear firsthand a particular story from one of your ancestors, what would it be and why? So would it be how two people met and fell in love? Would it be why does one branch of the family not speak to this other branch of the family? How a family member decided to immigrate and to America, like how they did that, or how someone survived a war, or something else. These were just to get your imaginations going. So, if you could hear firsthand a particular story from one of your ancestors, what would it be and why? Find a reasonably friendly looking stranger. So not your spouse, right? Like find somebody to talk
hundreds of years ago. When you think heard. What kind of stories do you want to hear? What did you discuss?
Just shout them out.
Immigration.
Immigration, like how they decided or got the money or made the voyage or any of that. What else?
Or what their life was like where they came from.
What their life was like where they came from. Yes.
The Irish invasion of Canada.
The Irish invasion of Canada. That's what you want to hear about?
That takes a whole hour.
It takes an hour. Okay. What else?
And they were born,
Pardon me?
location of birth,
They're where they were born.
like,
Yeah.
like in a cave.
Okay, what else?
How they survived the war.
How they survived the war.
Families and lack of communication.
Oh,
Which
You
one?
know, World War II.
yeah. There was a lack of communication during World War II. How did you survive not knowing what was going on with your loved one or with family that you had in Europe? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know why two parents in their right minds in Scotland would send 20-year-old twins on a 7-day voyage to the U.S. never to return.
Yeah. Right? Like what had to be going on at home for them to think that sending 20-year-old twins on a 7-day voyage across the sea to never see again was better
Right.
than what they were living in, right? I always marvel at that, right? Like how young people were when they made some of these trips or these voyages. And then you'd have to say goodbye and never see them again. In all probability, never see them again. Okay, so I wanted to remind you where all of this started. And it mostly started with Pastor Karen saying, "How long have you been here?" And I said, about almost 7 years. And she's like, "So you're going to go on a sabbatical, right?" And then she looked up in the church constitution and handbook all this stuff about sabbaticals. And then at the next council meeting, she sat down and said, "Just want the council to be aware that Pastor Ann's going to go on a sabbatical." And I was like, "Okay, we're doing this. And the Lilly Foundation, Lilly that makes all the pharmaceuticals, they must be interested in religion in America and in pastors because they have a whole grant project called the Clergy Renewal Project, where pastors can apply to get a sabbatical grant. And it's different than an academic grant. Like I didn't have to write a book while I was away on sabbatical. The grant had to include the congregation. So it couldn't just be for me, it had to be for us. And so the grant has money for you, like all the gift cards you had to go get coffee this summer with someone came from the grant. I started working on my grant proposal in the fall of 2003, submitted it in the spring of 2024, awarded in August of 2024 to the tune of $57,000. And then I got on a plane on June 12th, 2025. So the next step of the congregational portion of the grant is hopefully that we will get you all to form small groups and see what happens when you share with one another, not just one time at coffee, but meeting with each other several times, the same small group. And at the end of that, the grant will give you a chunk of change to go out to dinner. I think it's like $500 per group. I was writing this with Carl Johnson, and I was like, well, how much money do like 6 or 8 people need to go out to dinner? And he was like, I don't know, $750. So I brought it down a little bit from there. So that's kind kind of how all this got started. And there are people in this room who were very kind and wrote portions of the grant because it couldn't just be me. They wanted to know that you all were invested too. And this was kind of my central thesis. Researchers have only begun to discover the ways in which trauma can be passed from one generation to another. Cycles of abuse often repeat themselves over and over again. I wonder, can courage, generosity, or hospitality be passed down too? How about faith or resiliency? If stories can shape us, can the faithfulness of our ancestors shape us now? Can strength of character or sacrifices made long ago by people in my family inspire patterns of behavior in me, my children? Can the ability to articulate the long story of my family's faith strengthen my faith and in turn affect the people around me? What about the congregation I serve? So this is what I was wondering. You've heard of generational trauma, I assume, right? And so does that go both ways? Can it be, what's the opposite of trauma? Generational joy. Hey, nice. So this is what I was wondering. And this is what I was hoping for St. Matthew's. I want to harness the energy that you all had when we came back from the pandemic, ready to just, connect with another human being. I want to harness that energy into meaningful ministry, not just a program, but a culture of faith sharing and storytelling, so that you all would be comfortable doing that, would have ears to listen for it when you hear other people's stories, and that St. Matthew's would become a place where that was just a natural thing that happened. And I want to know my own sacred story and share it with my family. And they're here today. They're so not excited about being here today. And I wanted to connect with them as we connect to those who are long gone. So those were my goals and hopes and dreams. But the grant was also about rest and renewal. So I spent the first week on the island of Iona by myself. So this is Scotland. England isn't even on here. I had to cut it out. I flew into Glasgow. I took a train up here. I took a ferry here. I took a bus across here. I took another ferry, and this little dot is Iona. And taxi, plane, taxi, train, ferry, bus, ferry, walk, and then I got there. And this is the abbey. You can kind of see the hill behind it, but the abbey is in the foreground. It was founded in the 6th century. Here we go. A man named Columba sailed in something like this. It kind of reminds me of a canoe, but it's a circle, and it would have been covered with animal hide on the bottom. And you sit in it, and you have to know how to navigate the tide and the waves so that you don't just go in circles. So Columbus sailed from Ireland to Iona in the year 563. He had several followers with him, and he established a mostly self-sufficient religious community on the island of Iona. After Columba's death in 597, when Columba was made a saint by the Catholic Church, Iona became and still remains a popular Christian pilgrimage site. Because you would pray at the bones of saints. And he was buried at the abbey. And so people would go there to pray at his bones. And St. Columba is credited with spreading Christianity throughout Scotland. I could do a whole class on St. Columba and Iona and the Abbey and the whole thing. So if you want to do that, we can do that. But I gotta keep moving, unfortunately. So this is Columba Bay, and here's like Columba landed here 563. It just kind of blows my mind. Okay. Iona is where the first Celtic cross, like standing, is from. It's not this one. But they think that having the circle in the cross was more about keeping the arms up than anything else, like supporting those huge arms. It's lovely symbolism as well. But they're huge. And there's also a graveyard there. So after, like, the members of the community were buried there. And then St. Columba was buried there. And then this tradition built up as Iona is this pilgrimage site, to the point where Scottish kings wanted to be buried there as well. So the graveyard goes back at least to the 6th century, filled with Scottish kings, and there are people who've been buried there much more recently too. But I loved the lichen on this gravestone, so I took that picture. And this is the Abbey. And this is the baptismal font right here. All the way at the front, you can see the altar. And it, fell into disrepair several different times over hundreds and hundreds of years. But it is still an active worshiping community. They have worship there at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. every day. So when I was there, I went to church at 9 a.m. every day. And it's ecumenical. There's all different kinds of people. They invite like a musician to be there for a month and lead worship, and then they invite somebody else. And you can stay at the Abbey. And they make food and get your lodging. I did not stay there. I decided I wanted my own bathroom. So this is one of the gravestones, clearly kind of from Viking times, that was out in the cemetery, that they've now put into a little museum because they don't want it to be in the weather anymore. But there were many of these all over the cemetery there. And you'll see that right next to the property of the Abbey is some grazing land for sheep. And then you can see the sea right there. Guys, they have a playground at the Abbey. Look at it! Every church, I think like many of the churches we went to had special sections for kids just like this. So St. Matthew's is in good company. And this is the inscription I would like on my tombstone someday. It says, "Here lies all that could die of Bruce Kenrick." Isn't that lovely? Yeah. Okay, the grant paid for our travel, including my sister. So this is my lovely sister, Sarah. She's amazing. She lives in South Carolina. And I began all of this by getting a membership on Ancestry.com, which anybody can do. And almost everything I was looking for was available online because people are digitizing their libraries, their rare books, their historic documents, in part so that you can't take them out and touch them anymore. They don't want them to be handled. by so many people, so they're digitizing all of these things. And I'm going to talk about a very particular branch of my family tree, and the reason is because these two people, there happens to be more information about them than just when they were born and when they died. So that's why I'm focusing on them. So there's my sister. She has a PhD in music history, so she knows her way around a library. And it was hard. It's not just like going to a library and you say, like, I need a book on such and such. You have to like find the specific call number and give it to them days in advance so they can go find it in the archives. And then you have to place the book on these special pillows, and these are like weights to hold the pages open so that you're not bending them, and you go through lots of security. It was like, it was intense. I'm so glad she walked me through it because I think I would have given up. But they had their own tea room at the National Library of Scotland, so we could have tea together. And then my brother came, that's John. And I can't remember the last time the three of us had a conversation uninterrupted without like little kids needing to be put to bed or whatever. Just the three of us. It would have been worth it just for that because I love them so, so much. And this is a picture of us outside of the Michelin star restaurant that we went to together, where I almost passed out when I saw the bill. Thank you, Lilly Foundation. And it was like a 3-hour experience. It was pretty amazing. So this is the part of my family tree I want to talk to you about. And we're going to start with George Jameson. So I did all the work to get up to this place, so I'm just showing you this little section. But George Jameson is my 11 times great grandfather.
Wow.
He was born in 1587 in Aberdeen, and he died in 1644 in Edinburgh. And this is George Jameson. He was an artist. He started out as the kind of artist, it was like called decorative painting. So like, you had timbers in your roof and someone would paint like patterns on them for fancy rich people. But then he was apprenticed to become a portrait painter and became like Scotland's Van Dyck, or Scotland's first portrait painter. So really what happened is that he, when portraiture became the thing that rich people did, he was the only one in Scotland who knew how to do it. So they didn't have to go to London to get their portraits painted. They could go to him. And this is clearly a reproduction. These are the Sibyls, some of his work over there. And this is a book that I found on his life and art. So, here is an etching that one of his grandsons did of him and his wife Isabella and one of their children. And you can see that he has a palette and paintbrushes in his hand. So the artistry kind of went down to his children and grandchildren as well. So here I am in the National Portrait Gallery in Edinburgh, and this is one of George Jameson's works. And this is my brother, who's an artist, looking at a portrait done by his 11 times great-grandfather. And this particular painting is considered his finest work. It looks like a vermeer, like where somehow with paint it looks like lace on her big ruffly collar. So beautiful. And he has like 5 paintings in the National Portrait Gallery. This is his own self-portrait, and with like paintings in the background, and I love it. He's like, George Jameson as himself is what this is called. And he, when Charles II came to Edinburgh, he was commissioned to like paint the historic kings of Scotland to go like on an arch for when you enter the city. So he was an important guy in Scotland in art history. And my sister and I were walking the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, and this house right here, do you recognize it, Dave? This is the John Knox house. So this is where John Knox lived in Scotland. And we were standing here looking around because there's fun stuff on the facade. And then we looked at this house, and there's a plaque on it that says, George Jameson, artist, with his birth and death date. He lived in this house. It's called the Mowbray House, and it's the oldest residence in Edinburgh that still stands. And it is now owned by, the guy at the bookstore told us, like the ex-wife of the CEO of Boeing. And I wanted to like knock on the door, that should be why. So here I am at George Jameson's house. And it was his house when he was not in Aberdeen. His family all stayed in a house in Aberdeen, and he would come to Edinburgh to meet clients and paint. Okay, so now we're going back. Here's George Jameson, and we're coming back to Reverend William Wilson, who was born in 1690 in Glasgow and died in 1741 in Perth. So keep your eye here, because I'm going to go up this side of the family tree now. So here's the same William Wilson. He's my 8 times great-grandfather. And you'll see his father was Gilbert Wilson, and his mother Isabella Ramsey Wilson. So Gilbert Wilson is interesting because he possessed a small estate near East Kilbride and Lanarkshire. Being a zealous Presbyterian, he was persecuted during the reign of the second Charles. The authorities deprived him of his heritable property and sold his movables at the Cross of Glasgow. Mearns Moor, an extensive moorland in that district, was his hiding place for a whole winter. At length, he escaped to Holland, where he found an asylum until he returned with the Prince of Orange in 1688. His estate was not restored to him, but as some compensation for his losses, he was at length appointed comptroller of the customs at Greenock, which is like, you know, every ship that came into port had to kind of like declare what they were bringing into the country. So these are like the pieces that I was hoping I would get. So he lived unsheltered and alone. That's on the moorland, that he might evade the eager search of his enemies. His place of concealment was known only to a faithful female servant who brought daily what nourishment he required. acquainting him with the movements of his enemies as far as she could trace them, and giving him such information as might be useful in preserving his concealment or facilitating his escape. From this place he retreated like many to Holland, where he remained until the memorable revolution in 1688, when he came over with the Prince of Orange. On his return, however, his forfeited lands were not restored. He took up temporary residence in Glasgow, and then this says that he became the comptroller of customs. But a faithful female servant brought him food every day on the moor to keep him alive. That's like an Emily Bronte novel. That's good stuff. So, this is the cross at Glasgow. The market cross has a unicorn on top because the unicorn is the national animal of Scotland, even though it's mythical. So this is what they meant when they sold his movable goods at the cross of Glasgow. This is where they sold all of his belongings that weren't like a house, right? And then there is still a port of Greenock. So Sarah and I went there. So here we are at the port of Greenock 300 years after Gilbert Wilson. And it's still a port, big ships still come in through there. And we just spent some time kind of looking at the landscape and trying to imagine what it would be like 300 years before.
Can I just say how well connected he was? Because the Prince of Orange became King William
Yeah,
of William and Mary.
yeah,
And that was the final death knell for Catholicism in Ireland and in England when they came over. So that
Yeah.
was, he was pretty well connected.
yes. And lucky,
Yeah.
really, really lucky. So this was Gilbert Wilson at Greenock, and his son is the Reverend William Wilson, who was born in Glasgow, right? When he came back from Holland, he stayed there for a couple years and then got the job as the comptroller of customs in Greenock. So this is what we were able to find out about William Wilson. Mr. Wilson, according to the wishes of his parents and his own inclinations, entered the University of Glasgow, probably toward the end of the year 1704, with a view to study for the church. And these stairs are what graduates walk down at the university. And you'll see one side has a lion for England and the other side has a unicorn for Scotland. And then this, we found out that William Wilson in Glasgow was born in the Gallowgate, which is a street still in Glasgow, and it was the street that prisoners would come down before they were hanged. So the Gallowgate Street. That's where he was born. It's still there. We a little macabre, but we had falafel in a restaurant and looked out at the Gallowgate Street, and we're like, here it is. Okay, Wilson's self-imposed schedule while in university. Are you ready? Rise at 6 in the morning and summer at 5. From rising till 9, prayer and scripture reading. From 9 to 11, natural philosophy and biblical criticism. From 11 to 12, Latin. From 12 to 2, Hebrew and Greek. From 2 to 5 or 6, systematic theology. From 6 to 7, history. From 7 to 9, commonplace book. The rest in prayer. Prayer also at 10 and 2 and at 6, at lying down and rising up. Read 3 chapters of the Bible every day. Read through the Hebrew scriptures 3 chapters a day. This was not my daily schedule when I was in seminary. It's a super serious student, very learned. And we know that he was ordained on All Saints' Day in 1716 and became the pastor, one of 3 pastors, at the Kirk of St. John in Perth. So here's the pulpit at the Kirk of St. John in Perth, and here's my family after we went to church there on Sunday morning. Still standing, where he preached and probably where his children were baptized. So William Wilson was part of what is called the secessionist movement in the Presbyterian Church. And it's complicated, but I'm going to try and explain it. In the early 18th century, Presbyterian pastors were placed in parishes by the area landowners and nobility. They were the ones who decided. William Wilson, together with 3 other pastors, wrote and signed a letter protesting this practice. Among other complaints, they thought congregations should be able to vote for their own pastors. Because, and I have this here. This is a memoir that was written about him. Okay. The power of electing and calling ministers is given to heritors, so people who owned land. Yet the majority of the heritors, whether they have their residence in the parish or not, whether they are of the communion of the Church of Scotland or not, may impose a minister upon them, unless the reclaiming people can fix error in doctrine or something scandalous in walk and practice on the man who is the heritor's choice. So the nobility, the wealthy people just chose who was going to be the minister in the parish, whether or not they lived there or were members of the Church of Scotland. And he thought congregations should get to vote on their own pastor. So he wrote this letter, and other people signed it, and it became kind of a petition, and it took years because this is the Presbyterian Church, so there were like task forces and committees and like letters that went back and forth and action taken at the General Assembly and, you know, a reply. Finally, Wilson and the other secessionist fathers left the Presbyterian Church and founded the Associate Presbyterian Church in 1733. During this time, Wilson and his family lived solely by the generosity of his parishioners, because he was no longer getting money from the nobility and the heritors. It was just like the common people who were coming to church every Sunday, which was a real risk. Okay, so remember the girl who brought Gilbert Wilson food on the moor? She ended up living at William's house and being like a servant in his house until she died. So guess what she had to say about him deciding to just cut ties with the church and live off the generosity of his people. There's a quote from her in this memoir, and I'm going to have Dave Berger read it in his best Scottish accent.
It's this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on.
Take tent, Mr. Wilson. Take tent. What you're doing for his fear is a thing that gone away. I'll get your meat to carry you to the moor, as I did with your glad father before you.
That's awesome.
Perfectly clear, right? Basically, if things go on this way, I'll have to get your meat and carry it to the moor, as I did your good father before you. Right? Okay. Eventually, his parishioners built Wilson Church in Perth, which merged with several other congregations in the 20th century. Guess what the name of that church is today? St. Matthew's. Yeah. So, and they built it with their own money. Built this church so that he could have a place to preach, because of course he was kicked out of the Kirk of St. John's when he left the Presbyterian Church. So this is an etching that hangs in the National Portrait Gallery in London of the secessionist fathers. And William Wilson is apparently this dude in the powdered wig right here. And I'll pass that around. And here's some quotes from Wilson's diary. They have his diary. Christ gives no command to which he does not annex a cheering promise, and no duty for the performance of which he does not impart sufficient grace. Isn't that lovely? And this is what he has to say about preaching. An awful responsibility weighs upon the heart and fills it occasionally with unutterable tremor. Same. So at least we know that performance anxiety gets passed from generation to generation, right? And he goes he goes on and on about what he calls the agony of preaching. Preparing for its services, begun an idea, if not an act, while those of its predecessor are scarcely finished, and continued for 6 days with perpetual anxiety and checkered success, the torment produced by the want of leisure to elaborate the manuscript so as to bring thoughts into elegant and rhythmical expression, the delicious agony with which some half-formed idea is held, or dim sketch of some figure is seized, the painful effort to know and to be able to recognize all the members of the flock and gather somewhat of their character and history. And then he had 12 children, but only 3 of them reached maturity. In 1729, he lost 2 children. And then in August of that same year, all 4 of his surviving children got smallpox. So, and he wrote in his diary, of course, about this as well. All my 4 children fell sick. My daughter Isabella on the 11th, George and Marjorie on the 12th, and William on the 14th. They were all very ill. I was in great distress about them. On the 22nd day, when the smallpox was about the height, they seemed to be all in danger. It was a very bad pox. The Lord was now threatening to bereave me of all my children at once. I thought how pleasant my children, a few days before, were all about me. Now, said I, are they all to be taken from me? And then this is a blessing that he would say for his congregation, so I say it to you. That you may know the truth as it is in Christ, and that you may be rooted and built up in him, and may be established in the faith, is the prayer of him who is one of your pastors, more willing than able to serve you in the work of the gospel. So, at the National Library of Scotland, this is one of the letters that was sent back and forth over years to the Presbyterian Church in the secessionist fight. And clearly he had a scribe because this is William Wilson's hand. That what is contained in this and the 9 preceding pages is a true copy of a representation and petition to the ensuing General Assembly. And then it says, William Wilson, minister at Perth. So like, that's the original page, right? And I was looking at it in the rare book section of the library, and like you can see the ink on the parchment, and it's his hand. It was amazing. This is something that he wrote, Defense of the Reformation Principles of the Church of Scotland. It's like 300 pages long. This is what somebody else wrote back. Plain perjury and great iniquity of the seceding brethren's new covenant. So this is what was going back and forth, and all of these things survive to this day. And at the end of this one, the last paragraph is like, and if my opponents are going to continue to rely on hearsay and, all, lies, then we might as well sweep it into the dung pile. And here is a book of his sermons. And you can see here it was Daniel McInnes, Eius Libre, his book in 1766. So probably one of his students had his book in 1766, but it's like a bound copy, Wilson's sermons. And I have a reprint of it here. And they're long. You are so lucky I don't read like this. They're long, and it's hard to read because it's like a copy, probably of this or something like it. And so it's written like where the S's look like F's, that kind of old writing that it gives me a headache. But he would preach for a long time. And here is his grave. Sacred to the memory of the Reverend William Wilson, founder of the Wilson Church, Perth, who died the 14th of November, 1741, aged 51 years, and of his devoted wife, Margaret Alexander, also their 7 children. This monument was restored by public subscription in 1958. The original one was in Latin. So this is just a couple blocks away from the St. John's Kirk in Perth. So after we went there on Sunday morning, we walked over to the graveyard and found his grave. If you have questions, just jump in. We don't have to wait till the end. And if you all want to say something or add anything, you can jump in. Okay. So this is I'm going to struggle here. A minister. I think it's Reverend Wilson's grandson was also a minister, and he's writing a letter to his son. And this is he's referring to the memoir of Reverend William Wilson that we're passing around here. He's referring to this because it's just been published and is going to go into the booksellers' shops soon. And so this young man, Alexander, is related to Reverend William Wilson. So he says, "It would do you good to have the memoir by you, and to read in it daily how one with whom you are so nearly connected lived with God. He prayed much and much for his children, and we who are his children's children have come into his prayers. My dear A, when the memoir is put into the bookseller's window, let someone who knows have to point to you with honorable respect, saying, and there goes one of his descendants, and by the grace of God, not unlike him. In Glasgow, your own grandfather preached Christ, and your great-grandfather and his father were men of God, and witnesses for his cause. I did not know before perusing this memoir that we were connected by Mr. Wilson's mother with Mr. James Guthrie, who suffered martyrdom in the reign of Charles II at the Cross of Edinburgh. Our little family is compassed about with a cloud of witnesses. And that's how I kind of feel, that our little family is compassed about with a cloud of witnesses. And here we are. This is at the castle in Edinburgh, up on the high wall, looking out over the city. And I put a couple more pictures in if I had time, but I want to know if you have questions or, yeah, David.
How much of any of this did you know or surmise before you started on the study?
None.
Ron Jameson.
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
the artist,
Yes.
yeah. That you can just kind of go to the National Portrait Gallery and it's there, yeah. So I knew, David, I knew that there were Presbyterian ministers in my family. I didn't know how far back or their names or anything like that. So this is all from like joining Ancestry, but also my parents moved, and when they moved, discovered all of these letters, boxes, and so some of those letters and the genealogical work that like my grandma did and some other people before her, where they made these family trees, helped me know that I was in the right track getting there. Because Ancestry.com is tricky because they will give you hits on your family tree from everybody else who belongs to Ancestry.com. And if it's right, you're lucky. But if it's not, you're just borrowing false information from other people's unresearched family trees. And there's no way of knowing who's like done the real work and verified this and has a document to back it up, and somebody who was just like, oh, I'll just populate my tree with everybody else's stuff. So the work that my grandma and some other people did in writing these family trees was helpful in knowing that I was able to then verify the stuff on Ancestry to know that it was right. So you all should do a family tree as far back as you can remember and put it in a dusty box and give it to your children. What were you gonna say, Matt?
I was gonna say, that's what we connected with Ancestry in order to do DNA.
Yeah?
They are wrong about my family tree.
Mm.
They say that my grandfather was born on an island off of Finland and Sweden, and he was actually born way up in northern Sweden. I have that documented.
Yeah.
They also say that my mother was my grandmother. I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta be careful.
Yeah, you gotta do your own work. It's not automatic. Yes, sir.
How has this changed you?
No, she's not good.
I wanna move to Scotland. I think, truthfully, I'm still kind of processing that and figuring it out. it is amazing to me that I can see the words of my ancestors and know about their life and know that they were faithful people, and that has like a long, rich history in my family tree. Because there are more pastors other than the Reverend William Wilson. I think at some point there's like 5 generations where every son was a pastor. What would you say, Jay?
How this changed you? No, I think that there are many aspects of these people that you discover that I see in you and in the people that you know in your family. Certainly the artistic sort of. I mean, your brother is an artist. You have a very artistic sensibility yourself. Your mother, whose side of the family this is an artist as well. You know, to what extent those kinds of things are passed on generationally, or it just is a coincidence, I don't know. But certainly that, and you know, the Protestant temperament of not doing things just because the people in charge say you should is something that you definitely have inherited. But and also there's just that deep sense of faithfulness to something that is not that's not just given to you, but is something that you pore over and discover for yourself as well. The agony over preaching is definitely a piece that we all are very well acquainted with, but also not just because it's a hard task, but because it's really important, and it's important for the people that you serve to know that this is what God has given us to speak. So I think there's a lot of that is really present.
Being in those places was really wonderful too, to like know that the Kirk of St. John is still there, and that there are people worshiping there every Sunday. You know, that goes on and on and on. And you know, to be in Edinburgh at that house where George Jameson lived and kind of look up at that and go, oh my gosh, like he lived there. Like there was something really special about being in the place that this grant is the only reason that I was able to go to these places and kind of search them all out. A real gift. Yeah.
What generation did they land into North America?
I'd have to follow. If it's the Wilson family connected to another name in my family tree, Love. I don't know why my last name isn't Love. That would be great. And then they continued to have Presbyterian ministers, and they came in like the late 18th century, early 19th century in Pennsylvania, and set up a church there. Yeah, Ginny.
Were you able to connect with any current living
No.
relatives?
No. I did the DNA test, and it would, especially for this, like 12 generations back, or, you know, it would be, the DNA does not show a close, you know, relationship. Yeah. Yes.
More a curiosity thing. I mean, your research showed a fascinating history. Did you ever think or speculate, what if all of a sudden one of your relatives was a scoundrel that was a family? Would that ever come up?
I mean,
All Scots are
I-
scoundrels.
Dave says all Scots are scoundrels. I mean, that's a story too, right? Like if there had been some record of that, that would have been really interesting to know. And I kind of knew going into this, like there could be really heartwarming, positive things, and there could be really terrible things, you know, and I didn't know what I was gonna get. I promise I'm not like just showing you this, but I have this whole other branch of the tree that's really dark. I just got really lucky in having ancestors who there's like documentation right?
Preservation.
That's been preserved, like the diary has been kept, someone wrote a memoir, right? And that's why I focused on these people, right? Because it's more than just born in Aberdeen and whatever and died in whatever year. Yeah.
Well, you're lucky to have so much in writing.
Yes.
Many of my ancestors were illiterate.
Yes, yes, true. And other branches of my family tree, that would be the case too. Like there are Irish farmers in my background who could never have written as beautifully as Reverend Wilson wrote his sermons or about his children or anything like that. So it really helps that there was this branch of my family tree that was highly educated in a time when lots of people were not educated at all, because they have the records of the people who graduated from the University of Glasgow going back, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Marion?
This, all of this really brings your thesis to life.
Yeah.
It's
You think
really
so?
good. Oh, yes,
Good.
yes, absolutely. The
Good.
stories where you have come from generations before you,
Yeah.
and now you are this generation.
Yeah.
You are it.
And, you know, one of the things we thought about a lot on the trip was if one thing had been different, like where would that tree have gone, right? Like what if all of his children had died from smallpox and there wasn't anybody to pass on? And we were saying, I can't remember what example we were using. Do you remember, Lydia? What was it?
The girl from the war, if it weren't for her kindness and sharing food with him and
Yeah.
keeping him alive, then none of us would be here.
So I was telling this to Lydia and Jay and Simon, and I was like, because I'm so interested in this young girl who brought Gilbert Wilson food on the moor every day over the whole winter to keep him alive. She's like the hero of my family, right? Like if he had died or he'd been like captured or whatever, and then he served the son, William, and I was saying, like, if it wasn't for her, none of us would be here. And Jay was like, I'd be here. But I love that story, and it's almost too hard to think about all the things that could have gone in some other direction, because it's every move, right? Like every generation, every choice, every person you marry, everything that makes the fact that we can look back on it and see where it could have merged or gone off course or whatever. It boggles the mind. Yeah.
Do you think, in that same vein, people of other faith practices have stories like this in generations, and like how interconnected our different faiths could be, because generationally they had that in their caste, and it was trickled down to them. Does
Yeah.
that make any sense? So like,
Say more.
if we're Christians, and
Yes.
so Presbyterian, and that kind of
Yeah.
flowed down through your generations, Jewish faith, or of different faiths, and those same type of things, how we're interconnected in those kind of realms.
Yes, and wouldn't it be amazing if we had a class where I did this, but then like one of our Jewish neighbors did the same thing, or one of our Muslim neighbors did the same thing, right? And to see how precious those stories and traditions are that come along, yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah. Yeah, Rita.
The relative that sort of separated from the classic Presbyterian and formed, what was it called?
The Associate Presbyterian Church.
Is there such a thing now?
So the Presbyterian Church looks like it had a bunch of different iterations, and then they kind of spread out, and then they merge back together again, and then they decide to go back to the Church of Scotland, which is the Presbyterian Church. So there's not like an associate Presbyterian church that still exists today. Somewhere along the line, they made up with everybody and joined the church. Yes?
Did the pastorship of your ancestors, your great-great-great-grandparents, did that continue down the line? Were your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents pastors?
No. No. But, so a little further back, there are many, but not my parents, and not my grandparents. In fact, they have other stories of the church having hurt them, right? Hurt them. And, you know, my grandma was Catholic, and she married a Presbyterian, so they never went to church ever, right? Because they couldn't go together. So there are stories like that in my family tree too. So it's like me, and then you have to go back pretty far to get the next pastors. But my dad is a lifelong Presbyterian, you know. Yeah.
Has this affected or like informed your own legacy of like 500 years? Is somebody gonna like see this like writing that you're doing? Is that like
So
changing
pull
your
up my
like?
PowerPoint? You know, I thought about that when I was doing this research with my sister. You know, we were looking at that house that had the plaque on it that said George Jameson like lived here, and she was like, do you think in 500 years anybody's going to be looking for us, right? Like searching us out. And I don't know what that's going to look like given kind of the digitization of a lot of information. And it's just really hard to imagine that like what feels like my little life is going to be worth somebody's research. Yeah. Yes, Nancy.
How did you know to go to that little island where you started?
Yeah, that's cool.
Because I have really nerdy friends who Sarah Olson and Clark Olson went there on kind of their own pilgrimage. So it's kind of like if you know about Taizé in France, the community, and we sing some of their music at Lent. There are a couple communities like that people kind of visit, or like the Camino in Spain. Have you heard of that too? So there are a couple of those things that kind of belong more to the Protestant world, but that's how I knew to go there. Yeah, it's amazing. You should definitely go. You should all go. Scotland's beautiful. We should all go. And look at this. Is this Leah or Roberta?
That's Leah.
That's Leah. Do you see they braided her hair and put flowers in it? This is what you can do, guys. And then this is just, we kind of went on a Highland safari by Laura's recommendation. You can see the heather, this purple here, just gorgeous. So beautiful. So we had fun too. I didn't make them like sit in a library time.
How long were you actually there?
I was there for 5 weeks.
Did you try haggis at all while you were there?
I did. What do we say about haggis, guys?
It sucks.
I gotta do church, guys. I wish I could just talk to you about this forever. I'm so thankful that you came and were willing to listen. This was such an amazing experience. And again, thank you for praying for me and for my whole family while we were gone. Thank you for helping to write the grant so that I could even have this opportunity. It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So thank you so much. And if I have like more than 1,000 pictures, so if you want to see those, let me know. And if you really want to learn more about like Saint Columba and other Celtic saints, we can do that. We can have a separate class about that. There's a lot there to learn. But I gotta go do church. I'm sorry.